Hi there, my friends, and welcome back to the Salt Circle, where we delve into the sacred, the psychological, and the sociological with rigor and reverence. Today is episode 6 of our summer series, and we're going to talk about the nucleus's edge. So, this is not a surface level self help talk, right? This is a nuanced dissection of what it means to sever contact with those who have harmed us, interpersonally, systematically, and generationally, and why this act is not only defensible, but deeply sacred. So, let's begin. So, part one, right off the bat, defining no contact as a psychological and archetypal act. So, no contact at its core is the complete cessation. You're completely stopping the communication with an individual or group whose relationship with us has been consistently harmful, invalidating, or abusive, whether overtly or covertly. You know what I mean? This may be a parent, a sibling, a partner, an ex partner, a community, or an entire cultural system. So, from a psychological standpoint, no contact is most often initiated as a response to chronic relational trauma. Relational trauma, is defined by an occurrence or, it occurs when repeated experiences of neglect, enmeshment, betrayal, or abuse disrupts our ability to stay safe or feel safe in connection. In such contexts, no contact becomes a psychological boundary erected not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. You know, in Jungian psychology, we can interpret no contact as a confrontation with both the shadow and our persona. The shadow refers to all the unconscious contents of our psyche or our personality, ourselves that we were taught to repress. Rage, grief, boundaries, the will to survive, for fuck's sake. And the persona, conversely, is the socially constructed self. It is the mask we wear to survive in our families, in our communities, in our cultures, in our day to day life. So, going no contact is a dangerous act to the persona because it means that you are willing to rupture the performance. You stop being the good daughter. You stop being the loyal friend, the forgiving sibling, whatever, whatever, whatever. And you become, to the collective eye, unruly, cold, cruel, unyielding. But to the psyche, you are becoming whole. No contact is the site of individualization. It is the place where the ego loosens its compulsive attachment to external validation and reorients around the self, the archetype of psychic totality. In that sense, no contact is not, closing a door. It's opening the psychic womb, the place where new psychic structures, new stability in the self can be born. But to expand on that, there are the psychological, or there are the sociological dimensions, the stigma, the culture, and the structure. So, our psyches do not exist in a vacuum. They are born inside systems, family systems, sociological systems, cultures, religions, even historical legacies, right? We're born into something. And it is here in that positionality that the decision to go no contact becomes particularly fraught. So, in many cultural contexts, especially those with collectivist or, some type of patriarchal or matriarchal underpinnings, the family unit is considered so sacred, right? It's almost, the family is like a sacred social institution where one deviation is morally punished. It's not just socially frowned upon. So, cutting off a family member in these systems is not just an interpersonal decision, it is a disruption of this moral order, this sociological ecosystem that you were born into. And then the work on understanding and working through stigma really becomes essential. So, individuals who diverge from socially accepted roles or narrative are often looked at or labeled, you're spoiled, you're all about yourself, and that becomes almost the identity people assign to you. So the person who goes no contact with a toxic parent may be labeled as selfish, ungrateful. Oh, she has problems. She's always been unstable. You know that one. And it's not because, person going no contact is, but it's because their choice is threatening the group's collective denial. So to turn against that person, to label them negatively, almost becomes a righteous, not righteous, but it becomes a vicious act of that sociological dynamic trying to maintain order, trying to keep everything the same, trying to let the dysfunction continue to reign. And then we all this is where symbolic violence really comes in. It's, the subtle, invisible ways that social norms or expectations produce and reproduce harm. So the obligation to forgive is the expectation to just be civil. That's subtle gaslighting. And from other family members or other people who insist, oh, but they're your family. Oh, but that's your mom. You only have one mom. And this is all symbolic violence. This violence demands that the individual betrays themselves to uphold this symbol, this identity, this image of a family that does not actually exist. So, no contact then becomes not just a personal boundary, but an act of sociological resistance, a refusal to continue enabling intergenerational harm under the guise of tradition, politeness, cultural expectation. And so now we get into the process. Like, how do we actually live in this no contact experience? The before, the during, and the after. So before no contact, there's usually, a long agonizing period of ambivalence. Most people do not make the decision quickly or easily, or honestly even realize that this is an option available to them. This is also almost like a liminal phase marked by cognitive dissonance, where the mind is holding two truths at once. I love them, they're hurting me. It's not that serious. They just, steal from me. I am overreacting, even though the police get called here every other day. So, right? This is also a point where trauma bonding plays a huge role where we are almost intermittently validated by someone who harms us. Our nervous system becomes addicted to this cycle, the anticipation of love, of apology, or of change. And this becomes almost our drug, right? And during this stage, many people experience guilt, fear, fantasies of, well, they're not always like this. 20% of the time when they're not drunk, it's actually great. And these fantasies of things becoming reconciled, rebuilt, whatever, can really hinder us from, seeing the reality of the situation. So the decision to go no contact may feel like a betrayal, not just of the other, but of the self that was conditioned to endure. And then during no contact, your nervous system is going to go through a sort of withdrawal. The inner child, the fawning self, the part of you that just wants to be good, all of these will flare up. The silence may feel unbearable at times. And it's not because you miss the abuse, but it's because you miss this illusion of being chosen, right? You miss this familiarity of the chaos. And this is where the sacred nature of no contact becomes clear. It is not passive absence, it's an active ritual. Every time you do not respond, you are choosing safety and self ownership. You are affirming that your peace is not contingent upon someone else's behavior, of someone who's refusing to grow or even acknowledge their role in their own suffering and in yours. So, at the same time, even though you are choosing yourself, your self preservation, your self ownership, this also requires a lot of pragmatic support. You really might need therapy, bestie. It's okay. Might need some ritual practices, writing letters that you will never send, burning symbolic objects. I've made so many effigies in my day, let me just tell you. Creating a sacred space or a time where you reparent yourself. And this is not about punishment or criticizing you or acknowledging, oh, I'm so fucked up. I have so much I need to work on. Oh, I'm doomed. It's about integration. You are metabolizing the grief of losing a fantasy and the hard work and exhaustion that comes from gaining your own center. After going no contact, people often can have two seemingly contradictory experiences. So on the one hand, you found this profound sense of peace and clarity and relief, and no one is threatening you, your shit's not being stolen, you don't have to worry about, anything. You really don't. You've created and crafted safety and your own home. The emotional chaos subsides, right? You can hear your own voice again. Now you're not just trying to survive until the next day, but you can actually think, like, what are my dreams? What do I want out of life? Your somatic symptoms can lessen. You're not so tense. Your sleep improves. You're finally being creative again because you're not worried about being careful. And then on the other damn hand, there is grief. Sometimes deep and persistent and gnawing. You're grieving what never was. You're grieving the parent that never protected you. You're grieving the partner who you wasted all that damn time with, who never actually gave a shit about you and never tried. The sibling, you're grieving the sibling who did low-key abuse you, Whatever it is, the grief is not evidence of that you have been making a wrong decision. You are wrong, but it's evidence that you are finally telling yourself the truth and allowing yourself to experience this truth and mourn for yourself. And let me just be completely clear about this. Going no contact is not some magical liberation that solves everything overnight. It is, in so many ways, so much harder than staying. Staying maintains the status quo. It allows the mind to say, well, at least I'm not alone. Well, it's always been like this. I can handle this because I know what to do. I know how to deal with these people. It's avoiding confrontation, social fallout, internal upheaval. Going no contact is harder because you will face external judgment and internal turmoil. You will be told explicitly or implicitly that you are the problem. You will have to learn to tolerate the dissonance between what is true and what is expected. But it's also easier in time. You will stop performing. You will stop rationalizing abuse and intellectualizing your emotions. You will stop waking up in a panic or spiraling after one phone call. You will begin to cultivate a life that is attuned to your values and not your trauma. And before I get off here, I really just want to say this metaphor of like the nucleus is so crucial, right? The nucleus, like the yolk of an egg, it's the innermost, most essential part. The place where energy, where identity and integrity are housed. So when you go no contact, you step away from the gravitational pull of toxic systems pulling you to your edge, trying to make you fall off, and then you return to the nucleus. You stop orbiting someone else's narratives and begin to root into your own. So, I truly, truly, truly believe that to find your center, you must be pushed to your edge, but you also do have to return to your center. So, in so many ways, my friends, no contact is almost like a sacred rite of passage, a confrontation with the very structures that have bound and defined us. It's grief and it's liberation. It's not perfect, but it is very almost holy. So if you are here and you're choosing the nucleus over the noise, I honor you. So until next time, my friends, I am Daniela. I am your guide here in the Salt Circle. I will see you next week. And until then, stay sacred, stay connected, stay sovereign, and stay true to your own center. Bye bye.